Hi everyone, I'm Ann-Christin Kimmig, and after this very nice introduction on why we should be looking at sex hormones and sex and gender in research, I will now dive a little bit deeper into how to do so. So how to do hormonal staging. First of all, I have no disclosures, and when I now talk about hormonal staging and hormonal assessments, I will take two approaches to it, or divide it in two approaches. When you look at the hormonal fluctuations, you can see that there is a vast variation in those across the lifespan. So it is very necessary to look at each of those developmental milestones separately and develop or target methods according to them. However, when you compare the female and the male fluctuations in hormones, you can also see that there are sex differences in them, naturally. So it's also important to look at females and males separately and adopt different strategies. And even though it looks like women have a lot more fluctuations in their hormones and might be more relevant for them, please be aware that there is also a source of variability in male sex hormones. We just don't understand it as well yet. But there are studies showing that there's a diurnal cycle of testosterone, but also seasons can come into play. So in summer there might be higher testosterone levels compared to wintertime. But before I start with the recommendations on the staging, I want to highlight two key messages. First of all, sex hormones are very nice to link to behavioral or also brain measures if you want to investigate mechanisms. And they're always good to validate the hormonal staging you have done in your studies. However, hormonal measurements are expensive and invasive at times, so it has to be really thought about when to use them and when not, because there are hormonal staging methods not including hormonal measurements, which are also very powerful. So let's start with the males. Here you can see the developmental trajectory. Actually, for children, it's the same for females and males. They are most of the time when there's an age higher of 5 and no pubertal signs, it's defined as a child. And in puberty, most of the time, tenor staging is used. So this is a clinical assessment, but also there are very valid self-report measurements on that. Hormonal measurements are not as used due to their invasiveness. And then in adulthood, it's advised to control for age. As you can see, that testosterone declines with age. But also for the time of the day, as I said, there are diurnal fluctuations. And also pretest conditions, like smoking, exercise, everything which could influence testosterone. And as an add-on, it is interesting to look at free testosterone or cortisol. However, it is not explicitly necessary if you're not really interested in the mechanisms behind it. Then for women, it gets a little bit more complex. So we also use the same criteria until adulthood. For pregnancy, we have hormonal staging due to gestational age, so ultrasound-related, trimester grouping. In the adulthood, we have the menstrual cycle. There we use the subphases definitions, which can also be done via counting methods. And in menopause or transitioning, we have the straw 10 criteria to be followed. Regarding hormones, there are also many options and many interesting hormones to look at and to really validate which hormonal phase you're measuring. However, especially in the adulthood, so with the hormonal transition, with the menstrual cycle, it's very important to have some kind of measurement. And there are different kinds of hormonal measurements. There's urine sampling, saliva sampling, and blood sampling. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. So for instance, for the menstrual cycle, it's really advised to do ovulation testing, which is a urine sample, is non-invasive, it's cheap, and you can really make sure that you have an ovulatory cycle you're looking at. For the saliva, it is also less invasive than blood, but please be aware that you're only measuring free hormones, so not the bound ones. And blood sampling is, the gold standard, but it's very expensive and also invasive. So for children or adolescents, it's less common to use it. Another point I have about the natural cycle, please do not mix them with women taking hormonal contraceptives. They do have a completely different hormonal setup, hormonal working. There, the synthetic hormones are actually the driving hormones binding to the receptors. So if you do studies, please keep them apart and collect the information. Just the key takeaways for me, please use standardized staging definitions, so be it tender staging, STRO-10, or cycle subphases, and prioritize phenotype-based staging, as it doesn't cost anything, and only use hormones if it actually improves data accuracy. So for example, in hormonal staging, or you are interested in the mechanistic underlying, the mechanisms underlying it. Then, if possible, please combine data streams, so symptoms, behavior, and hormonal levels, and always, no matter what you do, report the staging method clearly, so everyone knows what has been done and can replicate it. And it's all very complex, but something is better than nothing. So even if it's not your main focus, it's already enough to just record what hormonal phase the women are in. And with this, thank you very much. And I'm also very happy to hear a really good example, a perfect example, how to do data collection having hormones in mind by our next speakers, Caitlin. And yes, thank you.